You've probably heard it said that people's attention is attracted to scary and destructive things, like when people can't help themselves and have to stare at a car crash. Well, I learned recently that there's also a contrasting positive impulse, that we humans are also deeply moved and attracted to the inspirational. So yes, we couldn't help but watch, unable to turn away as fires roared across the Los Angeles landscape, destroying homes, businesses, and icons of all kinds. But we also watched with our hearts uplifted, even hopeful, as hundreds of firefighters risked their lives to save people, property, and pets. We've witnessed amazing numbers of people donating and distributing food and water, clothing, diapers, and toys. People who themselves lost everything, volunteered to hand out supplies, formerly homeless people, helping those now newly traumatized to adjust to the shock of losing their homes, or even their loved ones. I have dear friends who lived in Altadena and who were rescued and evacuated by complete strangers when their cars became inoperable. What a blessing. I believe that even in the worst of times, we can find ways to feel inspired, to keep our hearts full of gratitude. Have you ever heard of Dorothy Day? She was a little girl during the great 1906 San Francisco earthquake. Despite the devastation, she witnessed the generosity that neighbors and survivors offered and wondered, why couldn't people be like that all the time? She went on to found the Catholic Worker newspaper and was a force behind the construction of hospitality houses, the first shelter model providing both food and clothing to those in need. And I couldn't help but wonder if any of these disastrous fires are birthing any new little Dorothy Days. I wonder if the inspirational stories we're hearing from LA can restart us having faith in our neighbors and maybe even in humanity. In 1955, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was only 26 years old. Imagine that, 26 years old. He was a new pastor and a young father. Yet that year, he was thrust into leadership of the Montgomery Improvement Association and was charged with leading the Montgomery bus boycott that supported Mrs. Rosa Parks while she awaited trial for refusing to give up her seat on a segregated Montgomery, Alabama bus. Dr. King learned many formative lessons during that time. He learned what it meant to hold momentous leadership responsibility. He learned that power concedes nothing without a struggle. And he learned that he would have to be willing to sacrifice everything. And when I say everything, that includes the possibility of losing his life. He faced bombings and other threats of bodily harm, not just for himself, but also for his young family. His work required remarkable strength and nerves of steel. Amid frivolous arrests and countless lawsuits, staring down a power structure and a legal system that was intentionally designed to deny Blacks full citizenship and personhood. He painfully knew that the bus boycott could fall apart at any moment. He worried about how much he was asking others to suffer and sacrifice. He had to continually urge others to love their neighbors while facing hate from those very same neighbors every single day. He battled to maintain his followers' faith in their fellow human beings, that those same human beings could be transformed. The 50,000 African American citizens of Montgomery, Alabama, kept their dignity, their faith, and very importantly, their unity in the face of tremendous obstacles and constant threats of violence. It was an amazing effort that captured the attention and eventually the heart of the nation. King wrote that we cannot understand the true meaning of the Montgomery story without understanding that this ordeal forged what he called a new Negro in the South, one with a new sense of dignity and destiny. Along with this had come what he called an awakening moral conscience on the part of millions of white Americans concerning segregation. At a very tender age, Martin Luther King was also beginning to transform the political, moral, and even cultural consciousness of the American people before he was shot and assassinated on April 4th, 1968. Dr. King challenged the system of racism and segregation mightily. People were confronted about their bigotry, laws were changed, but systems seek to maintain themselves. And once Dr. King was assassinated, our country lost his principled nonviolent leadership, and the civil rights movement began to fragment. When violence erupted, blacks were blamed. Many people whose minds had been changed by Dr. King began to turn away. Previous patterns of behavior crept back in. We still see that still happening today, all around us, every day. And yet, you know, I can't help thinking about the examples of Dorothy Day and Dr. King, how they managed to change the system significantly during their time, despite overwhelming odds. Evil cannot stand unyielding before the rising consciousness that almost inevitably comes from being a witness. Being a witness is what causes the heart to change, to transform. And the heart is the seat of courage. When I was young, I didn't understand why people were living separated and unequal, or why some people needed so desperately to keep themselves apart from others. But over the years, I've witnessed enough to know better. People are separated because the ones who want to control wealth and power manipulate us, working ruthlessly to sow fear, distrust, and hate, telling us lies about each other, designed to keep us afraid and to keep us apart. And the system works to keep them in power. Because of Dr. King and the civil rights movement, overt racism may have diminished, but it never left us. Instead, for a while, it became covert, more subtle. Yet our eyes were opened wide once again when we witnessed the deaths of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Eric Gardner, Philandro Castile, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others. And we witnessed the system's hypocrisy when people who killed these Black people rarely suffered any legal consequences. To me, it is glaringly clear that we need to fight the battles of the civil rights era. We must continue to battle for true freedom and full personhood for all people. And in these times, it's clear that means every American. trans people, gay people, people of color, immigrants, everyone. It is times like these that our UU principles are so essential, vitally important. The inherent worthiness of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, the use of the democratic process in our congregations and society at large. These principles make me proud to be a Unitarian Universalist, because we don't just promote these values, we live them. And because these principles are a beacon for us and for others. These principles guide us, keep us focused when the people controlling the system do their best to manipulate us, when they appeal to our worst instincts and play on our fears. When they do that, that's when it's time to take a step back, to remember who we are, what we value, what we believe. That's the time to be principled, to be strong, and not to succumb. Our principles call us to our higher character, our better nature. They insist that even if we are anxious, fearful, and confused, they can serve as a force, what Gandhi called satyagraha, or soul force, the force that helps us cleave to our values, because it's the right thing to do. We need to pay attention. We need to commit to act from love, and we must use soul force in the face of those who would goad us into acting from our baser instincts. Soul force, powerful force of living from our beliefs and our principles, of doing the right thing even when the odds are against us, is reinforced and strengthened by witnessing. Witnessing, like showing up at times of great importance, momentous times, like those during the Civil Rights era. Times like March 7th, 1965, when 600 people marched in Selma, Alabama, in support of civil rights, and they were met with a very different kind of force. The day when then 25-year-old activist John Lewis led marches across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and faced brutal, vicious attacks by oncoming state troopers and local thugs, the day now infamously known as Bloody Sunday. But did you know that 2 days later, on March 9th, 500 of then 30,000 marchers who showed up on that day were UU lay people, and another 250 were UU ministers. They were people like Viola Gregg Liuzzo and ministers like the Reverend James Reeb. They were both in Selma immediately after Bloody Sunday, and they were witnesses. But they were more than that. Do you know Viola Liuzzo's story? She was a young mother from Detroit, Michigan. She had 5 children. She was murdered by 3 Ku Klux Klan members for the crime of providing transportation to the activists after the Selma March. Do you know the story of Reverend James Reeb, born in Wichita, Kansas, father of 4 children, when he was savagely beaten to death in Selma 4 days after Bloody Sunday? This is what Dr. King said when he called those people to Selma after Bloody Sunday. Quote, "In the vicious maltreatment of defenseless citizens of Selma, where old women and young children were gassed and clubbed at random, we have witnessed an eruption of the disease of racism, which seeks to destroy all America. No American is without responsibility. The people of Selma will struggle on for the soul of the nation, but it is fitting that all Americans help to bear the burden. I call, therefore, on clergy of all faiths to join me in Selma." Dr. King telegrammed the Unitarian Universalist headquarters, as well as other denominations, and UUs did show up. In fact, the UU ministers that went to Selma made up nearly a third of all UU ministers in full fellowship. I don't say that to give us a pat on the back. I say it because we are part of a living tradition that strives to live out its principles. I say it because we are called to carry on in that tradition. We are called because we are witnessing the same patterns designed to pull us back into the past, to drag us back into disillusionment, fear, and apathy. Old patterns that call us once again to overcome, that call us to work again for voting rights, for women's rights, for LGBTQIA+ rights, and the right to a quality public education, and now for accessibility rights, immigration rights, and a healthy environment, and affordable housing and health care for all. I think if we are aware of the pattern, that we can transcend it. Reverend William Barber, founder of the director of Center of Public Theology and Public Policy at Yale Divinity School, says that unscrupulous people are working night and day to dismantle our social fabric in an effort to hurt us all. And so it is up to all of us to witness and to resist. What's the secret to bravery and standing up to this face, this degradation, and this injustice? What is the secret to standing up against hatred and cruelty? John Graham, author of Stick Your Neck Out, a street-smart guide to creating courage in your community and beyond. He says, courage is not about being unafraid. Courage is about doing the right thing and doing it well, even if you are afraid. Graham says that there is a link between meaning and courage. When you feel deeply about something, when you care about it, you have to go ahead and take risks despite your fears. James Reeb and Viola Liuzzo didn't know that just by showing up, that simply being a witness, that they would forfeit their lives. But Viola said, it's everybody's fight. There are just too many people standing around talking. James Reeb said, it's the kind of fight I believe in. I want to be a part of it. Why should we take such risks? John Graham again, if we don't, the problem will just get worse. It isn't going to get better on its own. And its effects will spread like a dark cloud, slowly enveloping more and more of us in its nefarious consequences. Graham says that in times like these, each of us, each of our individual examples is important, that you can inspire others. Dr. King had a premonition that after having a vision from the mountaintop of seeing the promised land of freedom, racial equality, and peace, that he would not get there. But he believed that we as a people would get there. You know, those of us living today may not get there either. But that doesn't mean that we don't work for it, strive for it, remain engaged in the struggle together. That is what we are called to do. And it's good to know, and it fills me with hope, that just because Dr. King is no longer with us, that there are dozens of Black leaders who have taken up the mantle. Let me name just a few of these amazing people. Brian Stevenson of Equal Justice Initiative. He's called today's Thurgood Marshall, overturning wrongful convictions and dismantling Jim Crow legacy. Inez Bordeaux of Workhouse Jail, which is working to abolish paid bail system. Cliff Albright and Latasha Brown of Black Voters Matter Fund. Stacey Abrams, Fair Fight Action, an organization that resists voter suppression. Desmond Meade, who founded Second Chances to change Florida law and restore the ability to vote to all who had paid their debt to society. Rashid Robinson from The Color of Change. DeJuana Thompson of Woke Vote. Mark Morial of the State of Black America Report. Derek Johnson, head of the NAACP. Tarana Burke, founder of the Me Too movement. I could go on. Dr. Gregory Diggs says of Martin Luther King Day that it is the annual date for rededication to do the hard work of promoting and increasing equality, equity, freedom, human rights, and justice in our schools, places of employment, towns, cities, countries, and around the world. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. The people I've listed here will rededicate themselves, and so will we. What does it mean in practice? It means showing up. It means making our beliefs and our actions congruent and convergent. In fact, Reverend Mark Morrison Reed says that such engagement was the true spirit of Selma. There are times in history when we see into the soul, when we see beyond the differences, when we know we are not isolated human beings, but instead we are bound together in a common destiny. We can come together in hope and healing. We can witness that connection and bend the arc of the universe just a little more toward justice. We don't have time for despair. There's too much work to be done, says Reverend Barber. This is our time. We cannot depend on those who gave their lives for the movement. They have passed the torch on to us. We will never abdicate our birthright and sell it to the highest bidder, he continues. We are on our way to higher ground. Forward together, forward together, forward together, not one step back.